It's official, Superman is already among us, and now it's time to talk about the spoilers of the movie. I'm gonna bring all the references from the classic comics that James Gunn drew inspiration from the explanation about Superman's classes to the war in Boravia, Justice Gang, Lex Luthor, Superman, Lois, controversial issues because yes, the film raises controversies, and of course, we're also gonna discuss all the positives and the negatives of this film, plus the moral of the story and the message that the movie aims to convey. This is a super mega analysis and probably the biggest one on the channel, so without further ado, let's dive into another complete mega analysis. Superman. Starting off with the costume, here we have a bunch of Easter eggs from classic Superman comics. David Corn's wetsuit is a true amalgamation of ideas directly from the comics that work really well overall. The S on his chest was clearly taken from Kingdom Come, except for the background, which in the comic it's black, while in the movie it's yellow. The yellow outline around the emblem is a nod to the classic Superman from Fleischer Studios. Also, the contours on the suit, the shoulder pads, and the neck collar are reference to Superman's costume in the New 52. The trunks over the pants are a classic item of the hero's uniform that James Gunn decided to include at the last minute. According to Gunn, the trunks were added one day before filming began. One thing I mentioned in my spoiler-free video and still stand by is that David Cornswood truly nails it as Superman. He really embodies a character, delivering a Superman with multiple layers. He saves everyone, gets hurt, comes back stronger, gets furious, gets emotional, throws punches when necessary. He really brings a more humanized Superman to life. James Gunn did a great job writing the Superman, and David's performance is completely on par with what was proposed. There's no argument there. One of my favorite dialogues from Superman in this movie is the one he has with Lex Luthor at the end, where he talks about how everything he does makes him human too. And the film makes it clear that Superman embraces his human side even more after the realization involving Jor-El. And since I've already touched on the controversy, let's discuss the negative points of this movie right off the bat. Kryptonian parents versus Mind Podcast. If there's one thing that's been unanimous from many regarding the negative points, is the revelation about why Jor-El and Lara sent Kal-El to Earth. Clark grew up believing he was sent to help humans find the best within themselves and be the greatest symbol of humanity to them. So far so good, and I think everyone agrees this is part of the core of Superman. Kal-El was sent to Earth with a message left to him by his parents, Jor-El and Lara, and guess what? Jor-El is played by none other than Bradley Cooper, while Lyra Lorvan is played by Angela Serafian. The film makes it clear that the message from Kal-El's parents was corrupted during the journey to Earth, so Clark only saw the part where it's mentioned that he's supposed to help humanity and all that. But after infiltrating the Fortress of Solitude while Superman was distracted fighting the kaiju, Luthor, through the engineer, manages to recover the entire message and translate it. And that's where we arrive at the most controversial topic of the film. Jor-El and Lara tell Kal to conquer Earth and be a dictator, acting like a god, and to hook up with as many women as possible to preserve the Kryptonian race. Of course this didn't sit well with fans of the comics because it's completely at odds with what Jor-El has always been in the comics. Jor-El has always been good and opposed tyranny on Krypton. Even when he was distorted in some stories, it was under some specific context. But in the film, Jor-El felt more like Zod than Jor-El, and it clearly didn't look good. Kryptonians are not like Viltrumites or Saiyans. Sure, this worked for the film's narrative, and it was important for Superman's journey to strive to be the human he was raised to be rather than a dictatorial Kryptonian. That makes sense with the story James Gunn wanted to tell, but it's one of the most significant aspects of Superman's character. In my opinion, it doesn't reach the same level as having Superman kill Zod. That's a few steps down, but it was still a significant change. It's certainly possible that all this involving the message could be reversed, but for now, it remains as reality. But folks, this is where the message of the movie comes in. Superman starts the film by seeing the message from his Kryptonian parents, and ends up seeing videos from his Earth parents. Clark distances himself from his Earth parents when he starts acting as Superman, and the moment he discovers the truth about the wishes of Jor-El and Lara for him is where he finds himself lost. He begins to doubt himself. And then comes a moment where he reconnects again after getting closer again to Jonathan and Martha Kent. Pod Kent tells him that what defines him are the actions he takes and not the wishes of his parents. And that moment is the most important in the film. The message is there. Superman isn't who he is because of all his powers and being an alien, but he is who he is because of the kindness and humanity he carried within him, which came from his adoptive parents. It's a film about parents and children. Film dynamics. Another thing that bothered some people but pleased many others, including me, was the pacing of the story. Man, there isn't a moment where the film slows down to that steady, dragged out pace. In Superman, that doesn't happen. There's always something happening, and the film is like this from start to finish. The first act is the most frenetic. Each situation feels like multiple frames from the pages of the comics, and that was a major win. The flying scenes of Superman and the use of powers were done in a really creative way by James Gunn. It's like you grabbed any monthly issue of a DC comic and jumped into a universe where things are already happening and heroes are already established. This makes it clear why there are already several heroes besides Superman around, and this is where a detail that bothered some people comes in. The film aims to focus on Superman, Lois, and Lex Luthor, so unfortunately, there isn't room for more character development and other character arcs, like the Justice Gang for instance, except for Mr. Terrific, who had a decent amount of screen time and stole the show. Man, the scene with Mr. Terrific and Lois taking on several Raptors who are Luthor's soldiers is incredible. Possibly the best action scene of the film, I'm not joking. Everything unfolds in a continuous shot, much like the corridor scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Mr. Terrific is totally badass. And talking about him, when he and Lois enter the Pocket Universe to rescue the trapped Superman, Mr. Terrific ends up getting the white lenses, which at the moment makes you think of who? Batman, of course. James Gunn definitely thought about this when creating that scene. And if Mr. Terrific has white lenses, I think it's impossible for Batman not to have them. However, I believe, as I mentioned in other videos, Batman could end up having detective vision just like in the Arkham games, and then he could have the white lenses as a narrative and functional tool for specific moments. Easter egg for Batman. Indeed, there's a scene in the film where we briefly see a shot of several cars leaving Metropolis when the rift opens in the middle of the city, with many of these cars heading towards Gotham City. In the comics, there have been stories where Gotham and Metropolis are close to each other.
This also showed up in Batman vs. Superman and even in the LEGO games.
Besides that Easter egg, there are others from DC brands like Big Belly Burger, which is the fast food chain, and Chocos, which is the sandwich cookie brand loved by Martian Manhunter. One of the reporters in the film is Will Reeve, the son of Christopher Reeve himself. There are also many Easter eggs in the film with names of various writers who have written Superman stories. There's also the Pocket Universe in the movie, but I'll explain all about that in a specific video here on the channel, so stay tuned. The film also features the band The Mighty Crabjoys, which is a fictional band that has appeared before in the DCU, like in Creature Commandos and the second season of Peacemaker. Clark is also a fan of that band. During the football stadium fight, the name of the Metropolis baseball team, the Meteors, appears. In Clark's room at the Kent farm, there are several references to space themes indicating that Clark has a strong interest in astronomy, which is a way for Clark to reconnect with his Kryptonian side. Metahumans. One impressive root from James Gunn, and it's well explored in Superman, is the presence of metahumans on Earth for over 300 years. The film highlights that metahumans emerged 300 years ago and Superman arrived on Earth 30 years ago, so people are already used to superheroes with superpowers, and that's really good. We no longer need to see Superman's origin movies or Batman's. Another interesting aspect of this is that the film shows what a superhero's everyday life would look like. In the scene where Superman arrives at Lois's apartment to talk while the Justice Gang is fighting a goblin from another dimension, it shows a bit of the life of a superhero, explaining many questions that always arise, like, where is a superhero while such and such is happening? The film answers it. Superheroes have lives beyond fighting crime. This detail is really interesting and it clarifies what life is like for those living in a world full of heroes and villains, showing their daily lives. After all, folks, it's a world from comic stories. It's fiction, not the idea of how our world would be if there were superheroes, but rather a world where that is real and common, just like in the comics. Superman defeated. For the first time, Superman gets defeated in this universe.
The film deliberately opens with Superman falling into the Arctic and being rescued by Krypto, clearly indicating that Luthor has been tormenting the hero before this and Superman has had other villains until now. However, up until this point, he hadn't been defeated by any of them. The film also makes it clear that the only force capable of stopping Superman is the clone of himself, Ultraman, who, unlike Superman, straight out uses his brute strength against Big Blue and has Luthor's genius behind him, while Superman does single all out with brute strength right off the bat. The others are just distractions while Luthor follows through with his plans while Superman is sidetracked. This is how Luthor managed to infiltrate the fortress, unleashing the Kaiju Metropolis to distract Superman. And speaking of the kaiju, Superman doesn't take down the creature alone because he doesn't want to kill it. He wants to take it to some kind of intergalactic zoo, or maybe he'd even take it to the Fortress of Solitude. Since in the Fortress from the comics and even animations, Superman has a zoo full of creatures and monsters to try to preserve the species and care for them.
If that wasn't possible, at least Superman would attempt a less painful euthanasia than the fate that awaited the kaiju, which kind of reminds us of what happened to Doomsday in the Justice League animated series. Superman cares about life, and Lex knows that and uses it to his advantage, making it another weakness of Superman's. Justice Gang. This group was one of the major highlights of the film and another win for this DCU. The movie establishes a relationship between the team and Superman in a really interesting way. They all know Superman's secrets, and even with their different ways of doing things, they still have a good relationship. This is evident during the battle against the kaiju, until moments before Luthor starts trash-talking Superman. Guy Gardner is hilarious and was adapted exactly as he is in the comics. Even the constructs he uses in the film are things you see him use in the comics. And besides being a character that leans more toward comedy, he is really powerful, having been able to single-handedly manage all the soldiers in the war in Boravia, showing them the finger with hand constructs. Man, Guy Gardner in the film is just like he is in the comics, and his dynamic with the other members of the Justice League International is super funny. Just imagine seeing his interactions with Batman at some point in the DCU. It would be amazing to witness that. And James Gunn has been planting seeds for the Justice League International to emerge in the DCU. The team isn't fully formed yet. They still lack a solid team dynamic compared to the Justice League or Teen Titans, for example. However, there is a member in the mix who not only is part of the current Justice League and the comics, but has also been a member of the Justice Society, and that's Mr. Terrific. Guys, Mr. Terrific is considered one of the top 3 geniuses in the DC universe alongside Batman and Lex Luthor. But when it comes to technology, no one can compare to him. He shows up a lot in the Flash comics, where sci-fi elements are more prominent than in other comics. Plus, the Justice Gang's base is the Hall of Justice itself, which was most likely bought by Maxwell Ward. The Hall of Justice emerged in Super Friends and was later integrated into the comics as one of the most iconic bases of the Justice League. In the comics, the Hall of Justice is usually located in Washington, D.C. and was inspired by a real building that used to be a train station. Whereas in the film, the Hall of Justice is in Metropolis, like several other DC adaptations, including the Arrowverse, Lego games, and Arkham games. Inside the Hall of Justice, there's a mural filled with other heroes painted on it, heroes who are part of the DCU, which aligns with how long the heroes have existed on Earth and how accustomed humanity is to their existence. You can see all the heroes clearly, but some people caught glimpses of Wildcat, Flash J. Garrick, Dr. Fate, and others. That's pretty cool. Basically, Superman is just another superhero among generations of superheroes. And although he's the Superman, he still can't save the entire world alone. That's where the other heroes come in, helping him save humanity and being incredibly powerful beings themselves, instead of useless heroes who rely on Superman to solve everything. Hawkgirl is another member of the team, and unlike Superman, she doesn't hesitate to kill if necessary, which also aligns with the Phanagarians, who are a warrior alien race. In many cases, Hawkman has been considered an anti-hero,
So the fact that Hawkgirl takes out the tyrant president of Boravia is still consistent with her character and shows the mortal difference between her and Superman. Metamorpho, who joins the team at the end of the film, is another mega powerful character who in the comics has even turned into a sun. In the Justice League animated series, Metamorpho also creates kryptonite while battling Superman. Guys, Metamorpho can transform into any element, and besides that, he has been part of a subdivision of the Justice League known as Justice League Europe. He has also been part of a team led by Mr. Terrific, the Terrifics. Plus, in the Batman in the Brave and the Bold animated series, he's been one of the outsiders. Do you see how everything is heading towards a Justice League International in the DCU? That makes a lot of sense. To later have a Justice League formation in the style of the current comics in the early 2000s animated series, it's just a matter of time. Boravia. Boravia is a fictional country in the DC universe, and in Superman #2, released in August 1939, Superman goes to Boravia to stop a war that was happening. He doesn't take sides, he just sees that the war is wrong and that innocent people die because of it. He destroys all weapons of destruction, tanks, airships, all kinds of armaments, and then goes to the political leaders responsible for the war, ordering a ceasefire. And folks, Superman single-handedly stops the war. That happens in the film. James Gunn adapts exactly what was released back in 1939 during World War II and brings it to the movie, showing that since then, humanity hasn't evolved much in this aspect and various wars are still happening today. Superman, being someone from another world, an immigrant, sees humanity from the outside. He sees that all humans are equal. He wants all people to be the best versions of themselves because they are one. Cameos. So yeah guys, here we have a few surprises. And I believe the cameo that surprised people the most was Peacemaker's appearance. While Superman was being torn apart by the media, none other than Peacemaker shows up on TV bashing Superman even more. Here we have Peacemaker being himself, the guy who loves spreading fake news about other heroes. What's curious is that Peacemaker has become such a popular character for DC that a lot of people in the audience I was with reacted when he appeared. And I saw other channels and profiles on social media saying the same thing. Man, it's amazing how Peacemaker is becoming more well known to the general public. I admit I was surprised by that. I thought his popularity was still contained within the nerd bubble following DC, but it's actually the opposite. Pretty cool, right? The second season of Peacemaker is gonna hit the DCU, aiming to answer the biggest question surrounding the character, which is that ending from the first season where the Justice League of the DCEU appeared. I feel like there won't be complex explanations for why Peacemaker is part of the DCU instead of the DCEU, but having a reasonable conclusion to that would be interesting. After all, the same Peacemaker was introduced in the Suicide Squad, where Bloodsport, one of the main characters in the movie, was imprisoned for shooting Superman with a kryptonite bullet. Something that didn't happen in the DCU, as the Big Blue's first defeat in this new universe was when he faced Ultraman disguised as the Hammer of Boravia. Not to mention that the first season of Peacemaker, a direct continuation of the Suicide Squad, and Creature Commandos references event from both. So whether we like it or not, the second season of Peacemaker is coming with that question. We just have to wait and see if they'll enter it or not. And now talking about Supergirl, the other cameo in the film. Man, how incredible. Millie Alcock came in strong in the DCU as Supergirl, and here in the film we get more details about her uniform, which is quite similar to David Cornswit's Superman, which was kind of expected. She has a brief appearance, showing up in the fortress drunk and wearing a coat to look for Krypto. The film gives us two interesting details in this scene. The first detail is the fact that Supergirl is drunk and in a coat, which is a clear reference to the comic Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, with a comic that's being adapted for her film coming out next year. And in this comic, the story begins with Supergirl drunk in a car on a red sun planet and wearing a coat identical to the one in the movie, covering her uniform. The Superman movie makes this clear reference and opens the door for the Supergirl movie. The other interesting detail involves Krypto. In Superman, it's revealed that Krypto is Supergirl's dog, just like in the comic Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, where Krypto plays a crucial role in the story.
The fact that he belongs to Supergirl instead of Superman is different from how it generally is in the comics, where Krypto is indeed Superman's dog in the 2000s comics. And he doesn't get along too well with Supergirl when she arrives on Earth. This even happened in the animated film of Superman and Batman, where Supergirl's origin is told. So here's another detail.
Krypto. James Gunn has said countless times that Krypto is based on his dog, Ozune. And there's nothing to complain about him in the movie. Krypto steals a scene. He's one of the film's highlights. And the post-credit scene of him and Superman sitting on the moon, watching Earth, is a direct reference to a page from the comic All-Star Superman. Daily Planet. Even though they don't appear much in the film, this is the most grounded aspect and shows the whole vibe of Metropolis. Then there's so much happening in the story, the Daily Planet arc isn't well developed in the plot due to lack of screen time. But all the characters in this arc are really well represented in the film, and their portrayals are quite similar to those in the comics. Still, even with not much screen time, the Daily Planet arc plays a crucial role in the story, as they have to uncover and expose Lex Luthor's shady dealings to the world, so he can be imprisoned for all the crimes he committed. Essentially, the folks at the Daily Planet are the ones who actually defeat Lex Luthor, right? Aside from Krypto, who attacked him. It's interesting how Jimmy Olsen has an extremely important role in the story. The film includes the joke that Jimmy is the nerd who's successful with ladies, just like in the comics. And thanks to him, Lois and the rest of the Daily Planet end up getting access to Luthor's plans, because Lex's girlfriend, Hugh Tessmacher, was secretly dating Jimmy Olsen. Lois Lane also shines in the film as one of the best characters. Rachel Brosnahan really embodies the most famous journalist from the comics, portraying her just like she is in the original media. She's a strong character on screen and steals the show multiple times. During her interview with Superman, it's mentioned that she's from Bakerline, which is one of the major neighborhoods in Metropolis. The relationship between her and Clark, the Clovis couple, has great chemistry. They have different worldviews and their relationship isn't cliched. They have very real arguments and very human discussions.
Everyone at the Daily Planet is very well written and characterized. And of course, I can't leave out Clark Kent, who has his goofier and clumsier personality, just like he did in the Christopher Reeve movies or in various other comics like All-Star Superman, for example. Even the explanation involving Superman's hypnotic glasses was adapted by James Gunn. The glasses aren't ordinary and have a hypnotic effect so that people see a different face when looking at Clark Kent than when looking at Superman. That was something mentioned way back in the old comics from the Silver Age, but it takes on a more sci-fi angle. Maybe this glasses explanation is the hardest thing for people to suspend disbelief over, so this explanation ends up being quite plausible. This isn't the only explanation in the comics, but I think it's the one that fits best with the Superman that James Gunn envisioned. Lex Luthor. Lex is another major standout in the film. Nicholas Hoult is fantastic in the role, and undoubtedly, he's the best Lex Luthor in films. In my opinion, he even comes close to the Lex from Smallville, played by Michael Rosenbaum. Nicholas Hoult's Luthor brings several facets to the character, being the rich guy with territorial interest, the scientist, the manipulator, the killer. Man, this Lex is amazing. He creates the engineer by putting nanites in her bloodstream, which gives the character the ability to create and manipulate any kind of weapon she wants. In fact, the scene where she hacks into the Fortress of Solitude's computer to recover the damaged portion of Jor-El's message really echoes her using powers in the Authority comics. The engineer is quite powerful and completely believe in Lex Luthor. This shows the extent of Luthor's influence over many people. The scene where he plays Russian roulette and takes the life of that character who helped and knew Superman in the Pocket Universe prison was quite powerful. It was a death that really shocked everyone in the cinema. Not to mention the obsession Lex has with Superman. He wants nothing more than to take down the Kryptonian, because for him, there's nothing more humiliating than someone who has had to earn everything to gain power and influence, losing the total attention to a guy who, in a way, is a newcomer who gets everything effortlessly. In the comics All-Star Superman, there is a moment where Lex, while imprisoned, shows Clark Kent, the reporter, how muscular he is and how difficult it is for a human to get to that level of fitness, unlike a Kryptonian who can easily achieve it. That highlights the jealousy and ego that character carries. In this movie, Lex invades the Fortress of Solitude, and this isn't the first, but the third time this has happened in Superman live action. The first time was in Superman the movie from 1978, the second in Superman Returns, and now in this one. Lex's girlfriend, a Teshmaker, is a superficial influencer used by Lex to promote himself further on social media. In fact, when Superman invades Luthor Corp, he tells Eve to film everything and stream it for the world. Lex Luthor's plan to discredit Superman through Kryptonians also happened in Superman Birthright, where Lex creates the narrative that Kryptonians still exist and they're going to invade Earth. He even engineers a fake invasion to break Superman's credibility. In the film, the Kryptonian expose happened, but in a different way. Up until then, the film established that everything was indeed true, but many fans speculate that the original message was distorted before Superman arrived on Earth, and perhaps some other villain like Brainiac manipulated it. In the film, Lex becomes so obsessed with Superman that he loses his reason at a certain point, and at the end he's imprisoned and sent to Belle Reve, the DC's maximum security prison where metahumans are incarcerated. This already sets the stage for Lex's future in the DCU, as it opens up the possibility for him to ally with other supervillains and perhaps spark a Legion of Doom or some other villainous group. There's nothing stopping the Joker from having done something to end up in Belle Reve instead of Arkham Asylum, which would make sense, since he has been in prison in various other prisons throughout the decades of stories released. It would be awesome if Lex and the Joker got to know each other and teamed up to face Superman and Batman. They would be the perfect antagonists for a potential world's finest film. Another reference in the film involving Lex Luthor is Luthor Corp itself. James Gunn once explained that when a company name is inherited, it generally carries the surname, and initially the company was called Luthor Corp before becoming Lex Corp. This also references Smallville, where the company's name Luthor Corp. And to wrap up Luthor's plans in this movie, there's a joke thrown in by James Gunn at one point, where in the Pocket Universe, there's a whole section filled with monkeys bashing Superman from social media. This is where we see life imitating art, because it's exactly what happened before the release, with groups trying to boycott the film even before it hit the theaters. Not to mention Luthor showing up in the media doing the expose on Superman in a way that resembles how the film ended up being covered by real-life news channels, involving that controversial topic about him being an immigrant. The Authority. The only thing left regarding Luthor's legacy is Planet Watch. The Planets Watch, that organization which will likely continue to exist even without Lex's leadership, as they'll be under government orders after being sold to the Pentagon. Planet Watch would be a DCU version of Stormwatch from the comics, which later became the Authority. The team that the engineer is part of, and a film for the Authority, has already been announced by James Gunn in the cast. The Authority is a group of extreme heroes with dark and bloody stories. Guys, now it's your turn to share your opinion. Comment down below what you think about Superman. Did you like the movie? On a scale of 0 to 10, what score would you give? Don't forget to hit the super like, subscribe, and activate the super bell, because that's super important to keep you informed and always in the loop with everything going on in DC. News, complete comic arcs, character information, and reviews are the core of the channel, so subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest. Thank you so much for being here in this video. See you next time.